Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Loreweek. I am, as ever, your host, the Lore Crusher. That would totally be my WWE name. Here comes the Lore Crusher. And I'd have a really big, prop book, and I'd smash it in between my, or not in between, like on my knee, and that would be my intro thing. I'll go, yeah. Alright, so as always, at the beginning of Did You Know? The beginning of Loreweek, I like to talk about news that I want everyone to hear. So, in that vein, let's go ahead and get that news out right off the bat before we talk about anything else. First and foremost, if you are JustinT or Galtori, we need to talk. I'm afraid there's something terrible to discuss. And that is the game Avengers. Marvel's Avengers, which is, well, so here's the thing. Marvel's Avengers has been on the books for about a year at this point, and it has had 5 people put money towards it, and all of which was before the game came out. Galtori and JustinT are the 2 people who have put the majority of the money towards that game. It's nowhere near funded, so, okay. But the real problem is, at the pace of its funding, it might not be playable by the time it gets funded. It is a problem, and something that we're starting to see with these kind of service games, that service games have the plug pulled, and as a direct consequence, you can no longer play them. So, there are other people who've put money towards that game. That would include Blue Wolf Alex, Ciela, and Jonathan Book. If you're any of those people, please get a hold of me. But what this boils down to, and really this is going to be Galtori's decision almost entirely, since she has put the vast majority of the money towards this. But this is basically a question. Should the Avengers run get axed entirely? Not something I'm particularly fond of doing, but given this exact circumstance, it feels like that's something that at the very least should be in consideration. Next thing. If you are Muddy 120, Not Blessed, Floating Triangles, Light 2099, Jazzy Too Good, Durable Diction, Lord of Mordor 007, SJ_NM, or Nix Katoon, please get a hold of me. You are the ones who are still remaining. We've gotten through the overwhelming majority of the list now, but you're the ones who are still remaining who have put money towards runs that have been axed, and as a consequence, if you could get a hold of me, just tell if you want some kind of refund, we can exchange information, I can toss it to you on PayPal, or it can be reallocated to a new run, just let me know. I shouldn't call that a refund. That's legally inaccurate. I need to add a legal thing to the website to clarify that. It's probably never going to come up, but just in case. Because legally, you don't pay for any services here. You're not spending money to make the Avengers run happen. You are donating money to me, and then as a separate and distinct legal process, I am putting that money towards an Avengers run. Which hopefully will never come up. Anyway, so that's those 2 things really quick. I've lost my notes. They're gone. Because I have so many things to look at. Here we go. All right. Remember to voot. I should probably put that up here. I apologize. If you have not vooted, I say voot. If you type in !voot, you'll get a link to it. I will also, as always, put a link to it in the VOD for you YouTube viewers. This is just a, yeah, exactly, Shaludo. It is a legally distinct process. As always, this is more just of an information collection kind of a thing, and me trying to get some information on when everyone has their highest availability of watching the show with regards to the live streams. Probably going to be some schedule rejiggering, don't worry, that's a few months out, but that's why I'm getting this information now. Thank you very much, Arathrobo, for the donation. It is what it is. As always, very much appreciate. I will put that towards Crusader Kings 3 in just a moment. Now, I think that's actually it, but I do want to do one thing here really quick. So, I was going through my bins looking for boxes, and I noticed that there's a couple games we've streamed and reviewed we haven't actually added to the thing. And remember, I want to kind of make this a little bit of a thing we do every lore week, because I'm weird, I'm strange. So, let's see. So first of all, we've got a NES game. That's Dragon Warrior right there. 2 NES games. We're up to 2. That's also funny because that means the first 2 NES games we reviewed are Super Mario Brothers and Dragon Warrior. And we've got Twilight Princess, GameCube, which goes down here. And the N64 stuff. Scoot down a little bit. Knock everything over, like you do. And Paper Mario 2 also goes down here. I don't even want to know how much that costs nowadays. Alright, Game Boy Color goes there. That's Dragon Warrior 2. PS3, that's GTA 5. I don't think I have a PS3 game up here yet. So we've got PS4, but that's going to expand into here. I think I'll put that down here with the PS2 stuff. And then PSP. I also don't have a PSP section up here yet. Why don't we stretch this out this way? Let's do the PSP over here. And then move the PS1 over here as well. And that way we'll have room for PS2 and PS3. This one. Assuming that that's going to be expanded in the future. I think that works. Okay. Why would I be concerned about that on Imperial Star Destroyer? Thank you, Candyman, very much. As always, appreciate. I will put that towards Mass Effect 2. Also, where is that coming from, Imperial Star Destroyer? It's like I'm in the middle of discussing which games go where, and you walk up and say, "Are you concerned about the fact that there are people who are starving to death in this country?" It's like, what? It's a hell of a topic shift, isn't it? Moving on. Let's move on to random news. That is all the media is, right? Voot, get a hold of people, Galtori and JustinT. Yep, nope, that's the big stuff. So, we saw a new trailer for the Loki Show. That's, we didn't actually get much new information, if I'm being honest, which is why this is part of random news. They do have, that we have a name for the new Loki, because this isn't Loki, after all. This is another Loki, and he is being referred to as a variant. Cool, that's cool. He is also part of the cosmic bureaucracy, and we get a nice look at exactly how bureaucratic that cosmic bureaucracy is. What's funny is this kind of cosmic bureaucracy is a really common thing in several fictions going back a long time. See our discussion during Jade Empire for an example of this. So, amusing. There's going to be all sorts of cool stuff. What's really interesting to me, though, is it looks like they might be using him to deal with other branches, which may or may not have to do with the stones themselves. But what I find myself wondering is, there's a bit in the trailer where they actually say, you know, why me? And the other person is like, well, you know, because you're cool and I want your perspective. I find myself wondering if there's some kind of greater plot involved as to why they're using Loki like this. I mean, either that or this is a Suicide Squad kind of a deal, because this could be just an excuse to get more Loki since they killed him off. And that wouldn't surprise me all that much. Either way, that looks cool. Speaking of video game news, massively wonderful segue there. Some of you may or may not be aware that all of the Shantae games are on the Nintendo Switch, except for one. Wait, nope, that's fixed. Shantae, the original Shantae, the Game Boy Color game, is now finally getting a release on the Switch this month, actually, which is awesome. Which I'm buying the hell out of that. But that also means that all of the Shantae games are now being ported into a modern thing. It's almost like having games ported into modern things like a Switch or a PC is a good thing. Is it coming to Steam? I have no idea. I didn't even look. Let's find out. Right now, live. We're going to Google it as we speak. Are you coming to the PC? Let's see here. Blah, 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 blah. There we go. Re-release. No. Interesting. I wouldn't be surprised if it does come out on the PC eventually, since the others are. So, Risky's Revenge? Game Boy Color. Crazy Norse. And yes. See, hang on. But I swore Shantae Risky's Revenge is already on the Switch. And I'm right. Okay. Freaking me out there, Blue Alex. I'm like... But yeah, no, that's already on the Switch. And I should know that because I streamed it. In fact, I think we reviewed it, didn't we? And now you're really making me question. God, I have no memory, apparently. I doubt myself. Shantae, Pirate's Curse, and no, we didn't actually review Risky's Revenge. What do you know? Strange. Well, anyways, it is on the Switch. This is the last one. The original one is the last one that has not yet been ported forward. Anyways, that's it. It's cool. It's awesome. Porting forward games, yes. And so far, the Shantae games have been good ports, so yes. More of this, please. Moving on. If nothing else for a historical preservation thing, but to once again reiterate this, because this keeps coming up every week since this has happened. You see Paper Mario 2 over there? Good luck buying that right now. Or the DS Dragon Warriors. Or like the Fire Emblem Radiant, because, you know, that's why that got axed, is we can't get a hold of a copy of it. At least not feasibly. Anyways. More random news. There's Neo World Ends With You is apparently coming out July 27th. That's cool. I don't know what they're doing or adding, but, you know, woo. They're also having a thing where there's an anime related to it, which surprisingly looks like it's the same general style. Cool. Cool. I'm with it. Sony is apparently focusing entirely on big hits only and ignoring its smaller studios and the idea of pushing out smaller games. Also, water, wet. In addition to this, Sony is thinking about pushing out a Gamepass competitor, which is also kind of a duh thing. This is pure speculation. This isn't actually fact at this point, but there are people who work with Sony who are stating that they are trying to come up with some kind of competition with the Game Pass. And again, duh, right? I'm a little surprised it's taken them this long to do it, because the Game Pass is actually a pretty legit idea. It is effectively the modern form of a rental. So yeah, get to it. I have no idea King of Koopa's live, but I do know that for whatever reason they do not apparently consider that to be the Game Pass. These are their words, not mine. I'll pull up the exact quote here. Hang on. Sony has said on multiple occasions the Game Pass model would not work for PlayStation. SIE boss Jim Ryan claims a subscription-type model would be unsustainable for PlayStation Studios because it often sees first-party budget games grow to well over 100 million. However, there's a follow-up interview that says that there's actually more news to come, just not today. We have PlayStation Now, which is our subscription service, and that's available in a number of markets, yada, yada, yada. I've said it time and again, people are writing this obituary are too mature. We had a guy on the show who made the petition to fire Ryan. I'm like, dude, that's way premature, because Jim Ryan doesn't know anybody, Sony doesn't know anybody. The truth is about what's coming, and their counterpunch to the Game Pass is. What I can tell you is I know they're doing stuff, because I know people at Sony who have told me there will be a response to a Game Pass. What it is, we don't know, and that's what I would worry about. There you go, boom. Their words, not mine. No, that's actually it for random news, believe it or not. Not a lot of random news. Last week, right after Loreweek actually, was First Contact Day, and as you might expect, Viacom, I think Viacom owns CBS nowadays. There was a recent remerge, it's very recent, just a few years ago. Hang on, who owns you right now? It is Viacom, I'm right. So yeah, Viacom, which is funny. I'll talk about this during the TOS ruminations, actually, because the split up of the companies and then the remerger of them and then the split up and then the remerger is just kind of part of Trek history now. But anyways, they're back under the same group again. They did a bunch of announcements. Sorry, let's get back into this. First of all, we have spoilers. It is... actually, is any of this spoilers? One of these is spoilers. So if you have not seen Star Trek Discovery Season 3, mute for a few minutes while we're on the Star Trek news bit, okay? Because this is spoilers for Star Trek Discovery Season 3. Okay, spoilers in 3, 2, 1. All right, so talking about Picard, just now that we got that warning out of the way. So we're getting Q back. John Delancey has confirmed he's involved, and we had the big obvious teaser, and with the Q, Queen of Hearts Q card, that's cool. Now, that's cool and all. I'm totally with it. John Delancey and Patrick Stewart act beautifully off each other, and both of them are great actors in general. There are some concerns, and I agree with them. If we're going to do an entire season of Q, that actually might be too much. And, well, there's some other considerations. But what I wanted to ask is, did you notice how much effort was put into framing things during that particular trailer? I mean, our most ill-considered actions as we see the Stargazer going by. But there's two things that really caught my attention about that trailer, other than the fact that Q's involved, because to be completely blunt, microname. To be completely blunt, I'm not surprised that Q's in it. It's Q. If you're going to do a Picard show, and the person who plays Q is available, which he is, then Q should be involved. I was astonished he wasn't involved in Season 1, but honestly, that was probably because they were still trying to figure out what they were doing with the show in general. So yeah, no, duh, right? What caught my attention is two things. First of all, there's a really lingering shot over Paradise Lost. Now, Paradise Lost has a little bit of Star Trek history. Really, two big things. First, the obvious one. Khan. Khan actually directly references Paradise Lost in Space Seed, and indirectly references Paradise Lost constantly in Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. I don't think they're doing anything with Khan, but that is the very first thing that came to my mind. And they made a point of really emphasizing Paradise Lost. Now, that may be for more distant thematic reasons. There may be some kind of heaven and hell thing going on with the Q continuum instead, because if you've ever read Paradise Lost, you know what I mean here. But either way, that was a very strange choice, although there is a second possibility that occurred to me, because some of you are probably aware of the fact that there is an episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine named Paradise Lost. It's part of the two-parter when it's back on Earth. I'm trying to talk around this because spoilers, but yeah, it's back on Earth, and there's some issues there. It's actually one of my favorite two-parters of DS9 and of Trek in general. Now, you might think, what the hell would the Picard show have to do with DS9? You noticed the Bajoran tablet, right? Specifically the Bajoran Reckoning tablet from the episode The Reckoning from Deep Space Nine. In a big discussion about time that also has to do with Q, with another reference to something related to Deep Space Nine. Now, this could be nothing, but it was actually the very first thing that caught my attention about the trailer. I was just like, didn't he smash the tablet? Yep. It is in pieces. That's how I identified it so quickly. I was like, wait. If you watch the trailer, it's at about the 12-second mark, if you want to see what I'm talking about. And it's just like, we'll see. I haven't even seen Picard Season 1 yet. So who knows? Moving on. Discovery Season 4. They get new uniforms again. And the trailer is terribly designed again. I don't want to bash Discovery. Remember, I haven't seen Discovery. But it's worth noting that the two of these trailers were pretty legit. The Lower Decks trailer was actually reasonably well designed. It's also 30 seconds long, but it was well designed. And the Picard trailer was well designed. There was some good cinematography, good visual presentation, good focusing, and highlighting of the right things. The Discovery Season 4 trailer played like a completely bog-standard, generic Hollywood action film trailer. Like they farmed that one out to the trailer people, which I've complained about for years at this point. Even just on this show, I've complained about them for years. And so, the Discovery Season 4 trailer sucked. Think about Big Threat. There's this thing. It's going to destroy all the things if we don't do the thing. Don't. We're going to have to rise to the occasion. Shot of devastation. And it's the bog standard. You know what I'm talking about. You've seen this type of trailer before. And yeah, it didn't have the wah because we're out of that era, it's funny. But yeah, it had the generic trailer music. I know I bash trailers a lot. I'm not going to harangue on this too much longer, but just to make my point very quickly, the Space Jam 2 trailer has most of these problems too. You've got to get in there, and you've got to win to save our son. Generic dramatic trailer music. Anyways, to talk about the content of the trailer, so we had a big thing in Season 3, which was the burn, which was incredibly stupid. I'm not going to spoil it, but I stand by that statement. What the burn was dumb, on a level that actually I feel personally insulted by. But Season 4, we've got our new big threat, and that is a 5 light-year wide gravitational anomaly, which threatens us all. Starfleet, Federation, non-Federation, doesn't matter. We're all threatened by... Okay, so I don't want to be casual about this, but maybe it's just because I've seen Enterprise recently, because I just finished Enterprise a few months ago. My first thought was, so what about the Storm? Season 2, Episode 12, The Catwalk. For those of you who don't remember that, there's a Class 5 storm, which is 6 light years across and moving through space at warp 7, which is so dangerous that they have to ride it out. They have to ride out the storm. You remember that one? I don't blame you if you don't. In fact, honestly, I complained about that storm because if you think about it for 5 seconds, it's really stupid. A 6 light year wide death storm that can engulf entire solar systems. Plural. Sure. Anyways, but that's our new threat. There's a gravitational anomaly. Whatever. It looks really boring. Moving on, then we have the Lower Decks teaser for Lower Decks Season 2, I think. Pretty sure it's Season 2. Haven't seen Lower Decks yet, but this is the best teaser by far of the group. And I mean that sincerely. It was, hi, we're going to go do some sci-fi stuff, right? And then about a second and a half of references, ideas, and concepts, and then it ended. It was actually surprisingly well designed, legitimately. And it was clearly designed for Trek fans, because every single one of those second and a half clips had something that I guarantee you a Trek fan will look at and be like, hey, there's a Mugatu! Anyone remember the Mugatus? It's okay if you don't. I'm old. What do you want from me? There were a few there. There were the Mugatus. There was the 4 lights. Had to have the 4 lights. There was Anbo Jutsu. I remember that one. And Packlids. Packlids were visible and present. But of course, the big thing is Riker. You know, what's his face? I don't even know the character's name. Is over on the Titan now, serving as the con officer for, Captain Riker. Now, that's cool. I like Jonathan Frakes. But what amused me most about this is I was thinking about this. This means Jonathan Frakes has now been in all of Trek except for TOS. Because he was in TNG. He was in DS9 as Thomas Riker. He was in Voyager as himself during the Q episode. He was in Enterprise as... apparently he's not in Discovery. I'm sorry, I didn't even realize that. Sorry, he's not in Discovery. Right, Discovery counts too. He's not in Discovery yet. He was in the movies, obviously. He was in Enterprise, like I just mentioned, and now he is in Lower Decks. We need to get Jonathan Frakes into TOS. We need to... He's not in Discovery yet. That's actually a good point. The option still exists. Oh, and of course, he's in Picard. Sorry, forgot about that one. Is he in Online? No, Frakes is a little bit out of the price range of Online. It's the same reason like Patrick Stewart and Kate Mulgrew are not in Star Trek Online. That's just pure money. STO doesn't make that much money. He might be in Prodigy, too. That would be interesting. Speaking of which, we saw a thing. Was he, Blue Felix? Oh, cool. Well, there you go. So now, further established. Janeway was revealed as the emergency training program for Star Trek Prodigy. I actually can see that Kate Mulgrew can do a pretty good motherly tone, which is funny when you consider the way that she portrays both Janeway and Flemeth, but let's not talk about that. I don't have any thoughts about Prodigy. It's a thing. Moving on. Now, speaking of total lack of news, There's a new Star Trek movie, and we're done. No, I'm dead serious. Now, this is actually not all that out of bounds. In July of 2023, there's going to be a new Trek movie coming out. There's no word on director, writers, script, actors, or timeline. Or anything whatsoever. Now, you're probably thinking, what? This has become more and more common lately. I'd say probably within the last 15 or so years. A lot of studios will effectively stake a claim on a release date, regardless of the status of the movie's actual status, right? Like whether or not it's good or bad. The studio will say, we're going to release a movie right here. Because what they do is they effectively have... Picture a board game, okay? And picture on the board game you've got all of the release dates. And they're all color-coded based on how well movies of different types sell at those particular dates. Because they have access to all this information and they track this stuff religiously. So they're like, okay, we should release an action movie here, a rom-com here, and then another movie here, and so forth and so on, right? And this is just kind of what they do. And so studios will actually stake claims on spots. And in some cases, other studios will say, oh, I'm going to release a movie on that same time and directly try to compete. Which is a risky move, because usually when that happens, the movie gets eaten alive by the better movie. Stuff like that. Is it connected to recent Star Trek movies? Maybe I misspoke, Nero's Eyes. Let me say this one more time. We know its release date and nothing else whatsoever. Let me really stress this. So anyways, point being that that's probably what's going on here. Viacom probably said, we want to claim that spot, and there's a pretty good chance that they haven't even started making the film yet, that they haven't settled on writers or director or cast or even the vague ideas of what it's actually going to be about. Like I said, pretty common. That's a good enough segue to move into movie executives are still stupid. Did you know that movie executives are some of the dumbest people in the world? Only surpassed by licensing label executives. Alright, so the topic here is this is technically a broad topic. How many of you remember, I know I brought this up before, how many of you remember when studio executives were like, hey, VHSs are the devil. They're the devil, and they're going to destroy the film industry. How many of you remember when they were like, rentals, the ability to rent movies, is the devil? And so forth and so on. So the latest round of this is funny. Because each time they've lost, thankfully, and the reason they keep losing is because we keep pushing back. Yeah, they did do this with DVDs as well. They keep pushing back, or we keep pushing back, and that's good. This is a concept I've talked about a lot. One of the, I don't want to get into a debate about the merits of capitalism. One of the points of capitalism is that it exists as a envelope barrier here, right? And companies will inherently and consistently try to push this way in order to make more money at the expense of the consumer. And what's supposed to happen is the consumers then push back and try to readdress the balance in order to keep things relatively balanced between the consumer and the consumee, basically, right? That's the idea, philosophically speaking. The reason I bring this up is because in many cases, what companies will do is they'll release something, and people are like, why would you ever do that? That's such a stupid idea. They do it because they're pushing the envelope. They're testing the waters to see what people will tolerate. Because the more people tolerate, the more they can push the envelope, and then they'll push it further and further and further. We've talked about this. We've talked about this with regards to, for example, Bethesda. Or rather, ZeniMax likes to push the envelope a lot, and has been doing so for a long time. But movie executives have been doing this for a long time. Here's the latest one, which, again, we have to push back against. So, how do I even go with this? It's not one specific company, it's a lot of different companies. I want you to imagine that you're sitting down to watch a sports game. Okay, I know, weird. Or movie, it doesn't matter. And you're like, hey, All right. And you're sitting there, and your friend comes in, and your buddy, and you know, maybe your dog is there, I don't know. And the movie pauses and says, I'm sorry, you haven't purchased enough tickets to watch this. Because what they're working on, and when I say working on, I mean they're well past the point where this is a feasible technology. They're in the point of trying to implement a tech that head counts in order to try and make sure that, okay, so you've got 5 people in the room, so you need to buy 5 tickets to watch this product. Now, again, pushing the envelope. That's what this is. That's why I started this whole speech with the nature of how this works. This is an attempt by many companies. Warner Brothers is one of the bigger ones. But, you know, this is a big push by several companies to try and push the envelope. It is actually built on the bones of the Kinect tech, which was developed for that purpose a few years ago. King of Koopa's Live. So I'm just kind of bringing awareness of this. This needs to not be a thing people buy. This needs to be a thing that we push back against. And this needs to be a thing that goes to hell. What's funny about this, though, what's really funny about this is stupid for 3 obvious reasons. The first one is greed. This is just plain naked greed. Well, hang on. I've gotten money out of you. But I want to get more money out of you because you're sharing something with... And you're not allowed to share things. Companies have this weird thing where they really don't like the idea of sharing things. I'm not sure why, to be completely honest. I'm really not sure why companies have this fixation unless they're just stupid. But... like, I can't even put into words how nonsensical the idea is of... Well, I sold you an apple. But you let your friend take a bite of that apple, so I'm going to charge them for the apple, too. No! It doesn't work that way! You moron! Whack! We just... so that's the first and most obvious problem here. Naked greed, excuse me. It is also green. The second problem here is the one that most people are upset about, and that's privacy issues. This is actually a pretty horrific violation of privacy. It is worth noting that we already have our privacy violated quite a bit in our lives. There's just not a lot to be said or done about that. Anybody who has, you know, a phone that is nearby them while they're talking, you know, we already accept a huge amount of privacy violations, at least here in the States. I don't know how this is in other countries. But this is going over the line in several very substantial and strong ways. Because here's the funny... We're not there yet, Tazara. Here's the funny thing. This privacy violation thing, this tech, it's keeping track of your head count and trying to do facial recognition, all sorts of other fun things. But that's just what they're using this tech for. On a camera that's on a live connection to the internet, that's constantly monitoring and watching, especially while you're sitting there doing stuff in front of your TV or your monitor. I mean, we make fun about, like, Cyberpunk, for example. Well, everything's online, you know? So you can just hack into anything wirelessly. But this is basically that. This is the idea. It's not wireless, but this is the idea of something being plugged in all the time. And I'm not even talking about, like, hackers as a problem, although that is a problem. But this would also be a problem by virtue of things like, say, other companies using this for other purposes to try and track who is there and what they're doing in order to determine, you know, things that they're trying to sell you, or things, maybe they're just trying to monitor your actions for some kind of purpose that may or may not be legal. And I'm not even talking about the ways that, you know, actual governmental agencies could and would use this because they would have legal access to this kind of thing. This is, So again, a little bit too much. Yeah, you seen Futurama? You ever have an advert in a dream? No. Currently no streaming service uses this. This is something that is being pushed, like I said. The tech exists right now. It could be implemented right now, and that's the step they're at. And that's why I say envelope. Push back. Because, holy crap. By the way, while we're on the subject, let's go with option 3. Because there's a third problem with this. Ignoring the... Let's assume for a moment that this is just something that they don't actually charge you for. Well, I mean, that doesn't work. But whatever. Let's ignore the naked dream. The naked greed. I didn't dream about naked stuff last night. I dreamed about playing Dragon Quest last night. And I was really frustrated because I was playing the original NES version. And like, you know, back where you have to hit yes and then hit stairs on the stairs. You know, use the stairs command to use the stairs. And it was like real life, though. So I'm like trying to go out the door and it's like, oh, right, hang on. And I pull up a menu as I'm staring at my door. And I just hit door and then the door goes... Let's ignore the naked greed. Let's ignore the privacy issues. There's a third fundamental pragmatic problem with this. What if someone roams into the room for a moment to say, hey, like someone comes in just to say something or is just showing up for a few seconds to give a hug or a kiss, or maybe it's a kid who's roaming in, hey, daddy, can I go do such and such? Or hey, mommy. And of course, maybe a dog, I mentioned this earlier, maybe a dog shows up, especially a larger dog, very obvious head to be counted. What if someone leaves? There are so many... I want you to actually picture, really put your mind into sitting there watching the game or watching the movie, and what will happen is it will pause. The way it's intended to happen is it will pause the footage, and a big warning will show up saying, wah! Inaccurate head count, buy a new ticket. And then they leave, and then because someone got up to go to the bathroom. Okay. And then, I want you to picture that. And the reason I want to hammer this point in is because this is stupid from an economic perspective. It's stupid from a personal and ethical perspective. But it's even stupid from a bare-bones practical perspective. Just the bare idea itself. Even if for some reason there was no malice or greed or malicious or just privacy violation or any of that involved. If for some reason this was still bare bones, it's still a bad idea. And yeah, it would be easier to pirate. By the way, I don't know this for total certainty, but I believe with strong certainty that this kind of crap is why piracy is as large as it is. Oh, don't mistake me. There's always people who will pirate because screw the man. There's people who pirate because they don't have the money. And there's people who pirate because, you know, individual reasons. But I've often believed for decades now that one of the biggest things that keeps the pirating market going is the other side of the fence, which goes more and more irritating with regards to anti-piracy movements. To use the old example, one of the easiest ways to enjoy a movie without 3 minutes of garbage at the beginning of it is to just download the movie. This is actually related to another thing, which is currently cycling around. Some of you probably heard about. This is kind of an unrelated topic, or rather a different topic, but a related topic. Some of you may or may not have heard that several companies are trying very hard to prevent password sharing with regards to subscription services. Something about that amuses me greatly, because it is the same idea. It's getting a little bit more gray, but it is the same idea. It is, I bought something, and I'm sharing it with someone else. You have made your sale. You would not make a second sale, because they wouldn't buy it if I wasn't sharing it with them. But now they have access to that stuff because I'm sharing it with them. Me and my close friends and family actually, between us, share, I think it's Netflix, Disney+, Hulu, and HBO Max. And each one of us has one of those subs, and we all just share the passwords for all 4 amongst each other. Oh yeah, Steam installation, that's another one, yeah. What's also related to this, while we're on the topic, this is something that we pushed back against hard like over a decade ago. You remember Costco for a while? So for those of you not aware of what Costco is, you have to have a subscription to even go into Costco. But it's you buy in bulk and the price per unit is really small. Because there's very low overhead and they sell in bulk, right? So you have to have a subscription to walk in the door. And what would happen is people would share those. Like, okay, well, you know, my grandmother, for example, has a subscription to Costco and would be like, here, go get some stuff for the party. And so she'd give it to my aunt, and she and I would go, and we'd go to Costco. And they tried to push back and say, well, hang on a second. That didn't work. Once again, envelope. Gotta push back. Gotta push back. Anyways, moving on. Wanted to bring... This is mostly a signal boost thing here. I mean, you realize that we are currently, as of this very second, at the point in time where you can buy air, right, Mike Romano? Not here in the States, but there are other countries I shall not name out loud. Anyways. It's okay, here in the States we're starting to trade on water, which is still one of the most horrifically evil things I've heard of lately. So Google. This is actually a pretty complex one. For those of you not aware, there has been a lawsuit going for... I don't actually know how long off the top of my head. It's been a while. I want to say 16 years? Something like that. It's been a really long time since this lawsuit has been involved. And I've been kind of following it, but I mean, there's only so much you can follow. I've talked about this before, right? Corporate lawsuits take forever. And so while I currently have, I think, like 5 corporate lawsuits that I'm following, the news is so trickled down that it's more like I tend to get a notification when something is resolved, like happened here. No, trading on water. It's a different thing, Loki Cutie. Much worse, much worse. I'm not talking about this. I'm talking about speculations, which is just... So, anyways, the long and the short of this is Oracle of America, who owns Java, used Java programming. In 2005, Google acquired Android and sought to build a new software program. I'm actually reading from the document here. For mobile devices, to allow millions of programmers familiar with Java programming language to work with the new Android platform, Google copied roughly 11,500 lines of code from the Java SE program. The copied lines are part of a tool called an Application Programming Interface. So those of you in IT know exactly what an API is. The API allows programmers to call upon pre-written computing tasks for their own programs. Over the course of protracted litigation, the lower courts considered whether or not Java's owner could copyright the copied lines from the API, and whether Google's copying constituted permissible fair use of the material, freeing Google from copyright liability. Now, let's go ahead and get cut to the summary first, because it's the least important thing that happened, as weird as that may sound. Google won. So there's the summary. Yay! Now... Oh, I'm sorry. It's Lord Ed. I completely missed his message here. I was probably ranting at the time. Okay, Google won. Yay! What does that mean? Ironically, it means A, nothing, because it's a status quo win. But in other words, the Oracle was trying to change precedent. Or excuse me, just change the circumstance. Sorry, I was reading Tazara's statement. Oracle was trying to change the circumstances, and Google was trying to say things should stay as they are. But this is a status quo win. But the problem is here, there's 2 major problems here. Let's start with that. The first problem is Google probably won this by virtue of the fact that they're Google, and they could afford to spend a decade and a half in legal battles going all the way up to the Supreme freaking Court. That's how far this went. Which is... Specifically, the Federal Circuit Appeals Court, if you want to get really specific on which circuit this was on. This is... Now, if Oracle had won, they would have gotten about $102 billion out of Google, which is why they wanted to win, of course, because most corporate lawsuits are about trying to rip money out of other companies. Duh. But this, God, it's been a train wreck, this whole thing. They actually lost the court. They actually lost the case in a lower circuit and appealed, which is why this, and that actually happened like 3 or 4 times. That's why it kept going up and up and up and up and up. That's how the legal system works, at least until you get to this level. It doesn't go above this. If they had tried to, if Oracle tried to appeal this, they would fail because there's nowhere else to go. This is at the top. But this may or may not set precedent. Now, you're probably thinking, what do you mean may or may not? It's an appeal in the appeals federal circuit. This is the definition of precedent. What I mean by that is if you read the actual ruling, which I will link in the description, of course, they're really specific. The judges are really specific about how they phrase their ruling to try and deliberately not set precedent. If you'll forgive me, I actually have some quotes here from the judges. Now, this is hysterical. Justice Breyer, who was writing on the majority side, says, and I quote, "It is difficult to apply traditional copyright concepts in the technological world." However, Justice Clarence Thomas, who was on the other side, said that allowing fair use simply because it allows new products to be created effectively redefines the idea and eviscerates copyright. He laments that the majority had decided not to rule on whether the code was copyrightable, instead saving that question for another day and relying entirely on fair use to use their judgment. The majority cannot square its fundamentally flawed fair use analysis with a finding that declares code is copyrightable, aka disagreeing consensus there. Now, let me try to break that down into a little bit more English for a second, because this is not the first or fifth or probably even 50th time this has happened. Let's say that I write a program, and let's say Bella over there steals it, and then Hazardous steals Bella's. So Bella sues Hazardous, and I sue Hazardous, and the judge is like, okay. I'm going to rule in favor of Lore because he's right. But I feel like this isn't a copyright issue, so I'm not going to rule on the copyrightable status of the code. I'm just going to rule that what happened was a malicious intent to steal IP. Now you're wondering, what's the difference there? The difference there is because the judge ruled that in that specific manner, the precedent that may or may not be set, because of appeals, does not apply to copyright. Copyright law has not changed. Sense make? This has been done so many times in the United States, it's actually silly. And it makes perfect sense. Because it's been done in this manner because most judges don't want to touch copyright law. For legal reasons, but also for career reasons. And for, oh God, that's a huge deal reasons. Most of these people want to just be like, no. I'll rule on the case. But copyright law stays the same. Now, the problem there is that if there was any case for copyright law to be brought into the limelight, it was probably this one. And it hasn't been. Because even the Supreme Court said, nah, and walked away from copyright law. And specifically, deliberately decided to rule regardless of copyright law. Now, this means that copyright law continues to not change. But what I find hysterical about this, I usually refer to the elderly that run the country I live in as out-of-touch idiots, because they are. But I love the fact, Justice Breyer, I'm going to quote him once again here, or she, I don't know, actually, she or she. Justice Breyer flat out says the truth of this. It is difficult to apply traditional copyright concepts in the technological world. That sentence is actually completely accurate. Because copyright effectively doesn't apply in the technological world. Because copyright law is so out of date at this point, and so not properly decided upon and not properly done, that it doesn't actually apply now to so much of modern society and modern function. It's an accurate statement. Which is why this is kind of like, okay, Huh. I'm actually surprised that that was an accurate statement. I wonder if they were briefed on that. I mean, they had the time. Lord knows this is a case that's a long time in coming. Now, what? No, so okay. So that's the first thing, is the fact that this will probably not actually touch copyright law. I know, right, Plutonia? The second thing is, what are going to be the effects of this? See, Mike Kamano asked the question, what's going to cause copyright law to trip and fall and break its nose? If anything was going to do it, it was this case. It's one of the reasons I was following this case. Because this was an attempt to copyright API, which, if I'm being completely honest, that would actually be horrific. that would set a terrible legal precedent, but also, more importantly, it would set a more real-life terrible precedent for people being able to just charge through the nose for similarities in code and spaghetti logic that's been built on other spaghetti logic for the course of decades. That's a nightmare land over there. We already charge too much for too many things. I don't think we need to start doing that as well. You know what I mean? But anyways, the immediate consequence of this, and this is the other side of the problem here, is that this has made it easier for lesser courts, because this was a appeal at the federal level. Yeah, no kidding, Bella. This isn't because of this has set a legal precedence, just not with regards to copyright, with regards to fair use and API specifically, which means that it's entirely feasible that we'll see more and more companies that will be like, oh, you know what? Oh, no, what? We'll change it. We'll adjust it. We'll reuse it. And that will be considered fair, and they could literally point to this case because, again, this is now legal precedent. This is the definition of legal precedent right here. So, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, we'll see. I don't know. This just happened. This is quite recent. April 5th is when this was actually decided. I consider this more of a win than not. So make of that what you will. That is just my opinion. I don't really know, obviously. How can I? But, yeah. I just wanted to share because it's my news or my job to share the news. And that's kind of my thing. It's okay. Once I take over the world, copyright law is going out the window. Start over. Etch a sketch it. There we go. Burn it to the ground. Just like we're going to burn Britain to the ground. Start over. Wait. No, that was Crazy Norse. Crazy Norse is going to burn Britain to the ground. Because Crazy Norse it really wants to be a sage, okay? Anyways, that is actually all I got with regards to this. Yes, that is correct, Silver Mask. It will also include DLCs. It's the PS3 store. I don't know how it would not include DLCs. I don't even fully understand your question, I'm sorry. But regardless, let me go ahead and chop off.